What's up, guys? This is the Honest Outlaw here, and today we're going to be doing a review on a gun that I have to admit I liked a lot more than I thought I would. We're going to be talking about the Colt 1911 9mm competition model. Now, this is sort of a base model for Colt, even though it's a competition model. It's not going to have a lot of the bells and whistles like the Colt Gold Cup, although it's not going to have the price tag of the Gold Cup either. My experience with 1911's 1911 9mm is pretty vast. I've owned quite a few. I've had Springfields, STIs, Tauruses, Dan Wessons, Colts. I even have a Christensen Arms that a viewer has sent me to review, which is pretty awesome. So why would you buy a 9mm 1911? Well, personally, for me, I like the pros that the 1911 platform gives you. The very nice trigger, I like the ergonomics, and I like the look and style of the classic 1911, but I don't necessarily like to pay a lot of money for 45 caliber ammo. And I like to shoot fast, and you can shoot 9mm a little bit faster for a lot cheaper. So I like the 9mm round in a 1911. The problem with the 9mm 1911s is a lot of times they won't be quite as reliable because they're not built around the 9mm cartridge. That seems to be less of a problem in the modern day because a lot of the most recent 1911 9mm that I've tried have been very reliable, including this one. So what would you use this for? I would use this for anything that you would use a handgun for, essentially. One of the problems with it as far as home defense, however, is that it doesn't have a light rail, but other than that, you could use it for plinking, you can use it for all types of stuff. It's just your standard run-of-the-mill 1911 chambered 9mm that is done pretty well. I loved this gun on the range personally, and I like it as a competition gun as well, with a couple of changes. Now let's talk about reliability. I shot 1,000 rounds through this pistol in 2 weeks. I had a lot of fun doing it as well, and I had 2 failures during that time. One was a stovepipe, and I think the other one might have been as well. I was shooting pretty cheap Freedom Munitions 147 and 115 grain loaded ammunition when those happened. You could blame it on the handgun, you could blame it on the lack of lubricant, because I did only lube it once every 500 rounds when I shot this pistol, or you could blame it on the 9mm design. It's entirely up to you, but I know that 2 failures out of 1,000 rounds is not super bad for me, especially with remanufactured ammunition. And it was 100% with American Eagle 124 grain and with Critical Defense 115 grain. I know that 1911s sometimes have issues with hollow point ammunition, so I like to use Critical Defense, and that's the ammo that I use in my carry gun, so I'm glad that it works for it because that would be the ammunition that I would use for self-defense. Now, as far as track record goes on this pistol, it doesn't get much longer than the Colt 1911. I mean, Colt was the original maker of the 1911. They've been doing it pretty well for a long time. I wouldn't say they're the best, and I wouldn't say they're my favorite, but for the price point, it's hard to beat. And as far as track record goes, like I said, a few World Wars, that kind of thing, hard to beat the track record of the Colt 1911. Now we'll get into accuracy, and it's ridiculous, as usual. If you're shooting a 1911, a lot of guys, a lot of reviewers especially, will talk about accuracy on a handgun, about bench rest accuracy. They'll put it on sandbags and they'll shoot it. I'm not that guy. If I shoot a handgun, I'm shooting it standing, kneeling, or prone. How I would shoot a handgun in either competition or in a self-defense situation. I don't find myself in my everyday life sandbagging handguns, so I think 1911s are usually the most accurate handgun on the market simply because of the interface with the shooter. I think the trigger is the easiest to operate, and I think the trigger is the biggest problem when it comes to accuracy with most people shooting handguns. So the 1911 trigger inherently makes it incredibly accurate, and the sights that are on the Colt 1911 competition are pretty good. I wouldn't say they're the best. I think that the front sight is a little bit wide, and as you see there, I have really kind of messed up that front sight. Part of that is because the fiber optic fell out, and since the front sight is much bigger than I'm accustomed to, I didn't have replacement rods that were that big, so I actually stuffed 2 of them in there and melted it together. Because you can see in the shooting, it actually popped off. Now that's not a hit on the gun's quality. That's very common for fiber optic sights. They fall off all the time, so if you're going to have a fiber optic front sight, just keep a couple extra fiber optic rods, because when you shoot it will fall out. As far as accessories go, oh man, you can get just pretty much whatever you want, and a few cool ones come on this gun. We'll talk about some of the accessories that came on the gun. We'll talk about some that I wish did. Now, it's got the combat style hammer, which I really like. Grips on it are actually pretty functional. I was surprised. They're textured enough to get the job done, and the Colt grips are very good looking. One of the things I like about the 1911 is the replacement grips, because a lot of guns shoot really good. Very rarely do they look as cool as this gun does doing it. I wish it had an extended magazine release for a competition model. I wish it had a mag well on it. And both of those two things you could easily add, but you're talking $200 extra there that I think should have came with it. But that's neither here nor there. I like the long flat face trigger that comes on it. Part of that is because I have big hands, so the longer the trigger, the better for me. The beaver tail grip safety is good, and it's very, very loose. Now, I actually like that. I don't like a super tight one, because sometimes if you grip too high and the grip safety is too tight, then you will failure to engage that when you try to shoot it, and that's kind of a pain in the ass. One thing I don't like about this particular model, I don't know if that's true of all of them, but I've seen that it sort of is a pattern on some of the forums, is that the safety is positive, yes, but it's got a lot of slop in it. Like if you press it down, it's just very sloppy, as opposed to a gun like a Dan Wesson or an STI won't have that slop in it. Now, another thing I don't like about the pistol is going to be the finish. Out of all the 1911s I've owned, this has got to be probably the cheapest finish that I've seen. And it just kind of looks piss poor, for lack of a better word, in comparison to some other higher quality 1911s that I've owned in the past. Even Springfields, which are the same price, in my opinion, have a better finish. But sometimes that can be subjective as well. I just think that they could have done a better job. Now, I said the sights are pretty awesome. I really like the undercut under the trigger guard there. That's a really nice addition. Sometimes some of the classic ones won't have that, but I really do like that. I think that's a really awesome addition. It makes you get just that much higher on the gun, and it makes you be able to fire a little bit quicker, and I like shooting fast. I don't know if I mentioned before, but this gun does come with two 9-round Colt magazines. Pretty standard pattern magazines for a 9mm 1911, and through the course of the testing, I used a couple of Metgar magazines, but for the most part I used Wilson Combat 10-round magazines, because those are my favorite. And for defensive use, even if I had this pistol and it came with these magazines, I would probably use the Wilson Combat mag, simply because I trust them more than any other magazine. And one of the awesome things about shooting 9mm 1911s that you'll find out is that if you've shot 1911s before and you think they're a little bit snappy, 9mm 1911s handle like a dream, especially full-size steel ones like this. I believe the weight of this pistol is 39 ounces, so it's not full size like your STI Trojan, I think, is around 42, 43 ounces if my memory serves me. It's been a while since I've owned one. And your aluminum frame 1911s like my Dan Wesson Guardian, I think, is 28 ounces. This is 39, so it's kind of right in the middle, erring on the heavy side, and that makes it just a little more maneuverable between targets, and it also makes it handle that recoil very well. It's a very low recoiling pistol, despite the biggest flaw that I believe on this pistol, and I know this is going to sound stupid to some of you guys, but I really don't like that it comes with zero checkering. Now, I know if you buy the Colt Gold Cup, it'll come with 25 lines per inch and all that stuff. Even for a gun that's, I think this is around $700, which is an entry point to the 1911, I will admit. 1911s can be expensive guns, but I wish it would have came with at least some checkering or texture of some way. You see just the lines they have on the back of the mainspring? At least that would have been nice. I mean, just totally smooth. When your hands are really sweaty, or let's say bloody, you know, worst case scenario, you could potentially lose grip on this gun. Now, because it has such high weight and such a low recoiling caliber, I don't think you're going to have too much trouble holding onto it while you're shooting quickly. I personally didn't. I was actually surprised. But I would really prefer that, especially for one-handed shooting. Let's say you get shot in your right hand, you're holding the bullet wound with your left hand, you got to pick up your gun. Now it's your non-dominant hand that you're not used to shooting with necessarily, and you got a bunch of blood covered all over your hand. This thing might slip right out of your hand while you're shooting. I know that's kind of a crazy situation to speculate, but here's an easier one. If you go to a USPSA match, a lot of the times targets will be left hand or right hand. You have to switch hands. And let's say it's in the summer, which is most commonly when it's going to be, or if you're in Nevada, your hand's sweaty, the gun comes out of your hand, you get DQ'd. Like, that's not a good thing. So if it were me, I would probably put skateboard tape or something on there, or especially if I was competing in single stack division. Now, one of the things that I thought of immediately was the flathead screws. Now, if anybody watches Yankee Marshall's channel, he's got a real problem with these flathead screws. I personally don't. He likes the Allen head screws because he thinks they look nicer. But for me personally, these screws will come out sometimes on the range. And the reason why I like the flathead screws is because it's a lot easier to find something like a pocket knife, or even, you know, a flathead screwdriver on a Swiss Army knife or something like that to screw these screws back in than it is to find a star head Allen key. So personally, I like the flathead screws. So overall, for $700 to $800, I got this gun new at Shields for $700. You might even be able to find it cheaper than that. But I think it's a great value. I like it. I was skeptical because You know, Colt has a great name. In the years past, at least the years recently, it has lacked in quality control pretty substantially, to the point to where many people will say that the only thing that you should even buy from Colt now is the AR-15s. If their quality control is so bad, they might put out good guns, they might put out bad guns. It's hard to say what kind of quality you're going to get. But for me, I think this is an excellent pistol, at least the one that I have sitting in front of me. 1,000 rounds with 2 malfunctions is pretty good for a 9mm 1911, and it's really good for a 9mm 1911 that comes in around $700. Add that to the low recoil and just the ability to shoot this extremely quickly. Some people will say that you can't use 1911s for self-defense or home defense. I wouldn't feel unarmed if I had this pistol in a self-defense situation. I really, really wouldn't. Even without the light, there's plenty of techniques that you could use to use a handheld light. It's definitely possible. If you're looking for a gun that's in the $700 range that you want to have for home defense plus single stack division and show it off, and you really like the 1911, I think this could really fit the bill. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please help out your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. Now, I do have a link to a local homeless shelter in the description below. Click on that to help those kids out. I also have a link to my Patreon account. If you become a patron on my Patreon account, it will enter you into a giveaway for a Tailhook Mod 2. I also have a link to my new channel called Classic Rando, and go over there and subscribe to that channel. That would really help me out as well. It'll be in my backup channel in case this one goes somewhere, because YouTube doesn't love gun channels quite as much as they used to. And I also have a link to my Instagram, my newly formed Instagram down there as well. So go over there and follow me on Instagram if you have that. Thank you for watching, and I'll check you later.